Hello everyone. I hope you're having an amazing day. Today, we're diving into a fascinating story about how a completely ordinary moment accidentally opened the door to an extraordinary destiny. Just one random decision, and suddenly, a life changed forever. So, stick around because the twist behind this story isn't what you think. If you enjoy it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any of the upcoming videos. The stuffed sausages lay neatly on the tray, their glossy surface catching the light as Yuri finally exhaled a quiet breath. It wasn't the kind of relief that lifted an entire burden, but just enough to loosen the tightness in his chest. His hands were tired from hours in the kitchen, yet the moment he finished, his feet carried him straight to the bedroom. He knelt beside the bed and placed his palm gently on Tutu's forehead. The heat that had terrified him earlier was gone. He checked again, cooler this time. Even the smallest improvement was enough to strike a spark of hope inside him, like a candle flickering in the middle of a dark night. "Her fever's down," he whispered, almost afraid to say it too loudly, as if the illness might hear and return. He pulled a chair close and sat beside the bed, brushing strands of hair away from her face. Even in sleep, exhaustion clung to her features, as if the sickness had drained every ounce of color and energy from her body. Still, seeing the fever ease brought a quiet joy that mixed with regret for not noticing sooner how worn out she had been. Just as the room settled into silence, the phone suddenly rang. The shrill sound cut sharply through the air, making Yuri's heart jump. He fumbled for the phone and answered quickly. "Hello? Yes, Ms. Lan." He tried to keep his voice steady, but the moment he told her that Tu Tieu had taken her medicine and was resting, his pulse began to race. A mother's instinct was always sharp, and Ms. Lan's voice on the other end trembled with worry. She said she would come immediately and bring porridge. Yuri knew there was no point in refusing, so he agreed. When the call ended, he remained still for a few seconds, staring at the sleeping girl. The idea of Ms. Lan coming should have been reassuring. It should have made everything easier, but instead, it reminded him how much responsibility he had taken on alone. How frightening it was to watch someone you love fall ill and not know whether you were doing enough. Yuri stood and went back to the kitchen. He tied the sausages with thin rib strings, each knot precise and firm. Then he arranged them carefully on a bamboo rack near the stove, where warm air would help them dry. The smoky scent from the glowing coals curled softly through the house, blending with the gentle aroma of boiling rice porridge. The home felt warm, safe, but beneath that warmth lay a quiet tension. He glanced toward the bedroom. Through the slightly open door, he could see Tutu's small, still shape beneath the blankets. A wave of tenderness washed over him, followed by guilt. If only he had noticed earlier, maybe the fever wouldn't have risen so high. But maybe, in some strange and painful way, this illness was pulling them closer, binding them through worry and care. Far across the city, Ms. Lan and Lin were preparing to leave. Lin packed a small, neat bag, while Ms. Lan stirred fresh porridge on the stove. Worry made every movement fast and clumsy. Nothing pushed a mother faster than the thought of her child in pain. Back in the small house, Yuri finished tying the last sausage, whispering silent wishes that the food, the warmth, and his care would help heal what medicine alone could not. When the porridge was ready, Yuri filled a bowl and carried it to the bedroom. He sat on the edge of the bed and gently shook Tu Tieu's shoulder. "Wake up a little. Eat some porridge," he whispered. After a long moment, her eyes fluttered open. They were dull, heavy, nothing like the bright eyes he knew. That tired look alone felt like a hand squeezing his heart. He lifted her slowly and fed her the first spoonful. The porridge was hot and plain, but it carried warmth, comfort, and care. As the spoon touched her lips, a faint blush returned to her cheeks. She swallowed slowly, painfully, and each movement made his chest ache. The room felt fragile and quiet, as if the wrong sound might shatter the moment. The spoon tapped softly against the bowl, marking every slow, careful bite. After a few sips, Tu Tieu whispered, her voice barely stronger than breath, If I don't get better, will you take me to the hospital?" The question froze Yuri's hand in midair. Hearing the fear in that weak voice sent a sharp twist through his chest. Hospitals meant something serious, but he forced his voice to stay steady. "No need. You'll get better with rest. Just focus on getting your strength back." His tone was gentle, but something in his calmness made Tu Tieu realize how much worry he was hiding. The sleepless night, the trembling hands, and the quiet anxiety tucked behind every word. He had been scared too. For the first time since she fell sick, she wasn't lying there helplessly. She made a quiet promise to recover as fast as she could, so Yuri wouldn't have to carry everything alone. When the bowl was finally empty, Yuri helped her lie back down. The faint warmth from the porridge eased her breathing. Meanwhile, outside sausages hung over glowing charcoal, their thin skins drying while curls of smoke drifted upward like whispered prayers. The house no longer felt lonely. Help was coming. Support was on the way. The weight crushing Yuri's chest began to ease. A soft knock suddenly came at the door. Yuri hurried over and opened it. Ms. Lan stepped in first, holding a pot wrapped in cloth to keep it warm. Lin followed behind, carrying a small bag and forcing a polite smile. The moment Ms. Lan saw Yuri, she asked in a trembling voice, "Is she awake? Has she eaten?" Yuri bowed his head respectfully. "Yes, Auntie. She woke up for porridge earlier. Her fever has gone down a bit." Relief washed across Ms. Lan's face. Relief only a mother could feel. She touched Yuri's arm gently. "Thank you for taking care of her. I know she's stubborn when she's sick." Lin stayed silent, her eyes scanning every detail in the room. When she looked toward the bedroom, the smile on her lips didn't reach her eyes. It was cold and hollow. Yuri led them into the bedroom. Tu Tieu opened her eyes and managed a weak smile when she saw her mother. Ms. Lan rushed forward, brushing hair from her daughter's face. "You scared me," she whispered. "You should have told me sooner." Even tired, Tu Tieu managed a soft reply. "I'm okay now. Yuri took care of me." The room felt warmer, but Lin stood at a distance, watching quietly. When she saw the empty porridge bowl, her fingers tightened. "Maybe she should eat more," Lin suggested sweetly. "I can prepare another bowl." Ms. Lan nodded gratefully, and Lin walked with Yuri to the kitchen. The fire crackled beneath the pot as Lin ladled fresh porridge into a bowl. Her movements were careful, too careful. When Ms. Lan turned away, Lin slipped a small packet of pale powder from her pocket and poured it into the porridge. It dissolved instantly. Her eyes darkened with satisfaction. If Tu Tieu got worse, she would end up in the hospital, and everything would fall into place. But when Lin turned, Yuri was standing silently in the doorway. He hadn't heard the words, but he saw enough. The motion of her hand, the quick hide, the guilty stiffness. Their eyes met. Lin forced a sweet smile. "Here, fresh porridge," she said lightly. Yuri said nothing. He walked forward calmly, took the bowl, lifted the spoon as if to taste it, then lowered it again. Without a word, he turned to the sink and poured the entire bowl down the drain. The powder disappeared with the broth. Ms. Lan returned and looked at the empty bowl. "What happened to the porridge?" Yuri answered gently. "It got too thick. I'll make a new one." Lin could do nothing. Yuri cooked again with fresh rice and clean water. When the porridge was ready, he returned to the bedroom and fed Tu Tieu slowly. Lin tried to intervene, but before she could say anything, Tu Tieu whispered, "No more, I'm full," and leaned against Yuri's shoulder. Later, Miss Lan suggested they take her to the hospital if she wasn't better by tomorrow. The word made Tu Tieu tense, but she insisted she just needed rest. Yuri stayed beside her the entire time. As evening arrived and the shadows stretched across the floor, she woke to see him working outside. The sausages still hung above the glowing coals. Seeing him there, quiet, tired, patient, made her heart swell. "You're lucky to have someone like him," her mother whispered. For the first time in days, Tu Tieu smiled. That night, Lin packed her things and left without a word. No goodbye. No warmth. Only cold silence. The house felt lighter without her. By morning, sunlight spilled gently through the curtains. The fever was gone. Her breathing was calm. Yuri had fallen asleep in the chair beside her, exhausted but still holding her hand. When she woke him, he smiled softly and asked, "How do you feel?" She whispered, "Better. Really better." Relief washed through him so deeply he didn't speak for a moment. He made her fresh porridge for breakfast. She ate slowly, strength returning with every spoonful. "You haven't slept," she said softly. "You look like you stayed awake all night." Yuri gave a faint smile. "Maybe I did. Someone kept getting hotter and hotter." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want you to worry." He brushed her hair gently. "Worrying means you care. Don't apologize. Just get better." By noon, she could stand, walk, breathe easily. No hospital, no danger, no poisoned porridge. When Ms. Lan left, she hugged Yuri with tears of gratitude. "Thank you. If you hadn't been here," Yuri shook his head. "She's family. There's nowhere else I'd be." As the house finally settled into quiet, Tu Tieu whispered, "You saved me." Yuri sat beside her and squeezed her hand. "No, you saved yourself. I just made porridge." She smiled, soft and grateful, and stayed awake, and protected me, and saw what Lin did. Yuri didn't deny it. "I handled it." "Thank you," she said, tears warming her voice. "For everything." He brushed her hair back and whispered, "Rest. Tomorrow, we'll make sausages together." For the first time, sleep came peacefully. The worst was over. The danger was gone. And whatever tried to break them only brought them closer. This story follows an ordinary person whose life takes an unexpected turn because of a simple, random choice. Everything begins with a quiet, normal day. Nothing special, nothing dramatic. But one small decision creates a chain reaction that leads to surprising opportunities, new connections, and a path they never imagined. Along the way, they learn that chance is not just luck. It is a doorway that only opens for those who are brave enough to step through it. The story reminds us that sometimes the biggest changes don't come from grand plans, but from moments that feel small and unimportant. It shows how destiny can hide inside everyday life, waiting for the right moment to appear. By the end, we realize that anyone can experience a turning point, sometimes without even realizing it.